Good evening, everyone. Can I just check that everyone can hear me? If someone can just pop in the comments that they can hear me, because I had a few issues last time. I was a little bit tired last time, I think, so I had a few issues. Anybody hear me if I start singing? Otherwise, I won't. Ah, fantastic. Thank you. Otherwise, I won't. There's no point in me introducing myself. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me this evening. My name's Holly and tonight we're going to be looking at keeping a reflective portfolio and reflecting in the dreaded doctorate application. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Lovely getting a few more messages in. We can hear you. Fantastic. So just a little bit of an introduction to me, so you kind of know where I'm coming from with this. I am currently an NHS assistant psychologist. I have just submitted my application 2 days ago, actually, for the 6th time for the clinical doctorate programme. So I know a thing or two about writing applications. I also have interviewed a couple of times, so I like to think that I sort of know the application process a little bit more now. Okay. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is based on other resources, things that I will talk about and I will link to in the Facebook group and in the comments after this. If there's anything that you guys want to ask while we're going through, please let me know. And if anyone wants to, let me know what sort of stage you're at in your journey. That would be really helpful, so I know sort of who's listening, what sort of experiences in the room. That would be really, really great. And before you start, obviously, you can click subscribe on the YouTube channel. That means that you'll be notified every time we do another webinar and any other videos that we do as well. So let's get started then. So what we're going to be looking at today is an introduction to reflective portfolios, what they are, how we keep them, what are some top tips to keeping them. And we're going to be looking at reflecting in a Declan Psy application. And then a question and answer section. So if you've got any questions throughout, you can put them in the chat or you can wait to the question and answer section. It's not a problem. Okay, so let's dive straight in then. What is a reflective portfolio? It sounds really a lot fancier than it is. For example, this is my reflective portfolio. It's a folder, as you can see. It's not anything fancy. People have them digitally as well, but it's nothing particularly fancy before you start getting panicked that you need to have a certain type of stationery and things. But what a reflective portfolio essentially is, for me, is a collection of reflections. It summarises the insights and experiences that you've gained. So it can be a place that you can really be honest and reflect about some of the experiences that you've had. It's like a journal. Like no one else has to read it. It's completely personal to you. You can also compare all of your reflections. You can have different sections. You could have a section for clinical experiences, for achievements, for areas of development, for different roles. That's the way I have mine organised. So I have them based on the different job roles that I've done. Because for me, when I'm thinking about hopefully going to another doctorate interview, it gives me almost like a Rolodex in my head, and I can pick out an example of some experience and a reflection that I've done that might fit with a question that they're asking. So I've done it in each role that I've had, and different clients and patients and things that I've worked with and case formulations. But you can do it however you want, whatever works for you. That is the beauty of it. It's really open and flexible. And as I said, it can be digital or physical. I am really bad for the environment. Like, I really like to print everything out. I like everything to be, as my family will know, some of my family are watching, as my family will know, I like to have lots of stationery and have everything colour coded and highlighted and printed and neat. And that's how I like to do things. So yes, you can do it that way. But of course, we live in a digital era, and I also have it digitally on my laptop as well. So you can keep it digitally however works for you. Actually, the BPS, is, if anyone's a member, has quite a good section on my CPD, so my continuous professional development, where you can log lots of different things that you've done and notes and things like that and plan your goals. So that's kind of like an online reflective portfolio. So that's another good resource out there. And the other thing you can have in there are logs. So what I mean by that is somewhere where you log something that's happened. So it could be a feedback log on some work that you're doing, a supervision log every time you've had supervision, how you personally reflect on that and how you feel about it, what you might want to bring to supervision next time, that sort of thing, or any projects that you're doing, and your own reflection as that's happening. This was a suggestion from my supervisor, who is a consultant clinical psychologist. And she said to me fairly on in my role, it would be a good idea for you to keep a reflective portfolio. Hence, the reflective portfolio was born. And actually, I'm really glad that I did. I've reflected in a far deeper way than I ever had before. And having a feedback, supervision, and projects log has been part of that. So recently, I've been undergoing an audit, a service audit. Which is a very detailed, very big piece of work, and having a project log has helped me break that down a little bit. So the start would be planning it, so the planning phase, and then you can have a bit of reflection about that, what some of the feedback is that you gained, how you thought it went, that sort of thing. And every supervision that I have, so I'm really lucky, I tend to get supervision once a week or once every fortnight, and I have 2 supervisors who are both consultants, so that's a really rich source of reflection because they both have their different styles, so that really helps. I definitely would recommend using the logs, and I've got some templates that I will put on the Facebook group afterwards, that you can use, but you can do it however you want. At the end of the day, it's completely up to you. You can do mind maps. It's really, really open. Whatever helps you make sense of a situation and think differently about an experience. You could also have journal entries in there, different reflective models, different ways of doing stuff, and that, as I said, is the beauty because it's just so open. So when I first started looking at examples, my supervisor said, Google some portfolios, see what's out there, look at revalidation portfolios. So I looked at nursing revalidations. While it's a different discipline to psychology, nurses have to do, I think it's once every 3 years, I could be wrong, but nurses have to do a revalidation portfolio. So they have to have 5 pieces of reflective accounts, like a reflective account of a discussion with somebody or a piece of work they've done. They have to show all of their CPD activities, because obviously with nursing and medicine, you have to, and psychology, you have to constantly be progressing and learning because the field moves so quickly. So you need to keep up with it and demonstrate that you are able to do that. And that enables you to keep your professional registration. So similarly, when we are qualified psychologists, we will need to be registered with the HCPC. If you want to know a little bit more about that, have a look at my first webinar on the page, because that goes through in quite a lot more detail about what the HCPC is and what that means for psychologists. But on their website, and they are available to download as well, so I'll make sure they're available on the group, are some CPD profiles of psychologists, early career, mid-career, and sort of later on in their career. And what sorts of CPD activities are useful, what sort of level of reflection might be required. Unlike nursing, I don't think, again, this could be wrong, but I don't think it is, psychologists don't have to submit for revalidation, re-registration, in terms of submitting a portfolio or anything. I don't think they have to do that every 3 years or something like nurses do, but your name might be picked out of the roster. So they pick a random selection, and then if you are asked to do this sort of portfolio, then you might need to. So that's why it's quite a good practice to get into already, and it also helps your reflective practice if you've actually got something tangible to show that you are reflecting, and to refer to, even in your mind when you're in an interview. That's why I referred to it like a Rolodex. Like, I know where it is in my file, therefore if I want to pick out that experience to demonstrate that point, then it will make a bit more sense. And my portfolio, as I've said, what's brilliant about a reflective portfolio like this, and the way that I've split it up into my roles, is that it allows for quite a lot of distinction between the roles and comparison between the services that I worked in and the client group that I was with, and it helps me revisit my reflections. So sometimes, like today, I went out for a walk today because my gym's closed. I live in Wales. Gyms are closed. We're in lockdown. So I went out for a walk, and while I was on my walk, I started thinking about different cases that I'd had and thinking differently about them. So that made me, when I came home from my walk, I took out one of the reflections I was thinking about, one of the cases, and then I reflected on it. I revisited it, and it gave me a different perspective. So that's another really good thing about reflective portfolios. So my top tips for keeping a reflective portfolio, if you are going to start doing this, there are 4 key things I think you need to be aware of. Be critical. And what I mean by that is don't be harsh on yourself. That's not what I mean. But being critical in the academic sense. So really thinking about the positives, the negatives, everything like that. Thinking in balance, being critical about an event, a situation, an article that you've read. If anyone has studied a psychology degree or a master's, one of the things that we do all the time is critique journal articles. So that could be another thing that you keep in your portfolio to show that you can be critical and to practice those skills. Because if you are looking to get onto training, then that is a skill that you will need, those sort of critiquing skills. Be comprehensive. And what I mean by that is to try and consider as much information as possible. You can think about bringing in psychological theory, knowledge, experience, bias, personal opinions, emotions, everything. Think about a range of experiences. It doesn't even have to be clinical experiences. It could be. So today, actually, when I went to the local park, and there were these 2 dogs running around. And one of the dogs was just running around so quickly, it ran into my shin and it really hurt. Like it's almost as if I'd gone up to the dog and kicked it. It really, really hurt. But then I started thinking about a load of other experiences where I've been in quite a reflective mood today. I was thinking about loads of other experiences where I'd been in pain in clinical settings and how that affected me. And so be comprehensive. Look all around you for inspiration, because there will be reflective inspiration everywhere. It could be thinking about things that happen in your childhood, good or bad. It could be anything. It could be even using a systemic formulation or something to think about your own experiences. It could be absolutely anything. That is the beauty of it. And no 2 portfolios will be the same because of that. The third tip is probably the most important one, is to be honest. Nobody's going to read your portfolio if you don't want them to. It's like a journal. I always think of it as like a journal for my professional self. I like journaling. I like that sort of stuff anyway, personally, and professionally it's exactly like that. But it would not work if I wrote down, I was really good at this today and this went really, really well. While that might be true, there are lots of things that I've done that were mistakes that is important to be able to reflect on. And be honest with yourself. We don't always have to be these perfect people. You know, if something is distressing to you, that's okay to feel that. I'm just trying to think of a specific example from some of my clients. So working as I did in substance misuse, there's some of the most difficult stories I've ever had to hear were from these clients in the room with me. And one of the things that was so bad, it was a lot of complex trauma, a lot of very serious things have happened to these people. But the thing that affected me the most is that they were so numb about it and so nonchalant, just saying these horrendous things that have happened to them and being in such a nonchalant way. It disturbed me and distressed me, actually, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle that. I knew how to handle something if someone was distressed and someone was upset and someone needed comfort, but if someone was just not willing to engage with that and was completely closed off, that was new for me. So being able to honestly reflect on things like that, or times where a client has brought something up that's affected me in my personal life, and then it immediately stirs up some of those emotions, but you have to keep it behind your professional mask a lot of the time. So being honest about that experience and reflecting on that is another really important one. And I think it goes hand in hand with being critical. So some of the services we work in, the structures might not, we might not agree with the way that some services are commissioned and things, but if we're honest about that, we can start to get critical about them we can start to really think about them. So that is my if you're going to take one thing away today about reflective practice, about keeping portfolios, is being honest with yourself. Honesty is the best. And the last point about keeping reflective portfolios is to be proactive. So I first, when I was doing my master's up in Newcastle, which is a fantastic course, by the way, we had a reflective activity to do, an assignment to do, and it was basically keeping a reflective portfolio, but not in this. I feel like this is a much more refined way of doing it and a much more applicable way of doing it to clinical psychology. But what we were asked to do, which was just as valuable, was to look around for inspiration, things that caught our attention, things that seemed significant to us. So that was, here's a folder, fill it up with whatever you find, whatever makes you interested, then really reflect on that and think about it. So I really enjoyed that. Looking into, articles and looking on the news and all these different things, looking in the Psychologist magazine and the BPS website and all of these different places. It was really freeing and helpful, actually. And I think that's really important as psychologists, pre-qualified, qualified. You're looking at the wider society. We are interested in the study of people at the end of the day. So being proactive is really important in that. But as well, what I mean is to be proactive in terms of plan your goals. What is it you want to achieve? The end goal is not getting onto the doctorate. And I think for a few years, I've been looking at it like that. I've just been like, yeah, I'll handle training. I'll just handle it. It'll be fine. I'll handle my career as a qualified psychologist. I won't think about that now because I need to devote 100% of my time to getting on. It's not the end goal. So what is your end goal? Is it to inform public policy? Is it to write a book? Is it to be a researcher and write lots of papers? Is it to establish a new theory? Is it to work in private practice? Is it to, there are lots of different goals, but think about what your goals are. Assess your own needs. A lot of the time when you start training, all the courses have different ways of assessing what your needs are, and a lot of them ask you to assess your own needs. So if you go in with an idea of what your needs are and you have already tried to work towards those needs, that's going to stand you in really good stead, not just to getting a place necessarily, at interview, but also when you're on training, because you want to succeed on training as well. So this is a really good practice to get your head round. As well, while we're assistants, while we're healthcare support workers, we are pre-qualified. We have more time than a lot of qualified staff might for CPD and things like that. And we're very lucky, so we need to use that. And to think about what you need to improve on. Yeah. So those are my top tips for keeping a reflective portfolio. But there are some other bits that you can do. Obviously, this whole webinar series was about reflective models, which we will go into in a little bit more detail. Webinar 1 and 2, they go through reflective models in a little bit more detail as well. But there are other different models that we can use to help us understand ourselves a little bit better and to fill up our reflective portfolio. This is a model called the Social Graces. It's by Burnham. It's very topical at the moment, I think, because a lot of the time we are now thinking about race in a more visible way, particularly race. But, for years we've been talking about gender in a particular way as well. So that's why this model particularly is important. So the Social Graces is spelt like this, and each of the letters obviously stands for something. So we've got geography, gender, gender identity, race, religion, age, ability, appearance, class, culture, caste, education, ethnicity, economics, spirituality, sexuality, and sexual orientation. So it's a model that helps you understand what is important to you, what about your experiences fits with some of these. And you can find this very easily online, but one exercise that I would really encourage everyone to do at least once, and you can revisit it, is think about which of these grab you the most. Which of these, all these graces, grabs you the most, which piques your interest the most. Then once you've got a list of those, So for me, it was gender was really important, race was important, age, education, and class were very important to me, and they stuck out for me. Gender and gender identity, actually. Sorry. So, for example, gender stood out to me because as a female, we've had to fight for a lot of our places at tables, if you know what I mean. We've had to fight for our voices to be heard a lot, and that's definitely changed. Even in my lifetime, that's definitely changed. But I was very aware when I started working that I was a young woman, and that young women who take an interest in the way that they look are often not taken very seriously. So that's why all of those sort of components grabbed me the most. But then the next thing, so what grabs you the most is the first question. The next one is, how does this affect your practice? So it could be that when I started my first job, I was very, very keen to show that I was serious and that I knew what I was doing and that I was competent. I was very keen to show these things. So that's an example of how it can affect your practice. But what this exercise does is it contextualizes you and your experience. It helps you make sense of things in terms of the world around you. What you can think about is every single person walking this earth will be affected by these things differently, pretty much. We all belong to members of the same group. So, for example, I am a female, I am a white female, so I belong to that group, if you like, but I'm also a human, so I belong to that group as well. So some groups share similar sort of stories and experiences, but every single person will experience this differently, which is why it's a really good model for you to reflect on. Another one is thinking about family scripts. So what I mean by this is what was the narrative in your family when you were growing up? So for me, I was really fortunate. I came from a really loving, supportive family. The message was consistently, if you do your best, that's the best you can do. And if you work hard, you will succeed. You will achieve what you want to achieve. And thinking about what your family scripts are and how that affects you now, or how it has affected you in the past, or thinking about clinical cases where these things have affected you and you might not have known it, it kind of enlightens you. It gives you a different insight into you as a clinician and you as a person as well. It's an enormous source of personal growth. So those are my top tips for keeping a reflective portfolio. And I hope that's been helpful for people. But now we are going to move on to the next part of this webinar tonight, which is all about the applications, the doctorate applications. So if anyone wants to let me know where they are in their journey, if they've applied before, what's going on for them, that would be really, really great. So I'll give you a bit of basics about the doctorate application. DClinSci is the award that you're given when you qualify. So like a PhD, that's the award you're given. And when you do a PhD or a master's, it's like an MSc or an MA. When you do the clinical psychology doctorate training program, what the letters that will be after your name is DClinSci. That's why I shorten it to that, because training in clinical psychology or the clinical psychology doctorate program is mega long. So basics. Applications are done through Clearinghouse, which is a website. The link is later on, but you can search it very easily. Leeds Clearinghouse Clinical Psychology or something like that. It will come up very easily. The things that you will go through, the application is all online and it's split into different sections. So you've got basic information, qualifications, experience, and personal statements. The personal statements are where you can reflect. The basic information, qualifications, experience, that's all like a normal job application. That's all just putting in the information. There it is. So we're not going to talk too much about those bits now. We're going to just talk about the personal statements. What's really important, though, when I'm going through this is that your reflections are based on your experience and your applications should not be like anyone else's. That's my absolute top tip for doing this. So the personal statement section then. This is the bit that causes everyone so much anxiety, and I understand it. I did 14 versions of my application this year. And I had people look at it as well, which was really helpful. Yeah, if anyone wants me to look through their application, let me know, and I'll see if I can find some time to do that or pair people up. So it's split into different questions. The first question is reflection on it's in what ways have your research and or work experiences made you a better candidate for clinical training? This is where you can reflect on your work and research experience. The second one, we'll go into these in more detail as well. The second one is what you hope to gain from training. What is it that why psychologist? Why not go and do any other career? That's what they really want to know. And then some information about yourself. Just checking the comments there. Lovely. I know, I feel the same. I feel exactly the same. The comment there was just saying that the audience member cringes when they read their application from a few years ago. Agreed. When I read mine from last year, I'm surprised, honestly. So these statements should show how good a candidate you are for clinical training, why you are ready, how you fit with all of the values of the NHS, why you should get a place. It's a 15% success rate, 1-5, which means that 85% of people that apply will not get a place. So you really need to stand out from that crowd. And also bear in mind that these shortlisters, people that are going through your form, probably will have hundreds to read, is the first point. And secondly, they will probably only spend about 5 minutes on your form. We can spend months preparing ours, but they don't have the time to spend all that time. So you need to make it really easy for them. So let's look at the first one then. Reflection on your work or research experience. In what way have your... Yeah, so that's the question there. So think about some personal reflections. What has made you a better candidate for clinical training than you were before? Why should you get a place? You can think about a case study, something you've noticed about yourself and your practice, something about how you're able to manage your well-being and self-care and balance all of those priorities. Clinical training is demanding. It's surprising that so many of us want to put ourselves through this because it is hard. So they need to know that we are going to be able to manage that in some way, or at least be open about if we're not managing it. The other thing is, I was on a BPS webinar last week, and it was really interesting. They said that the NHS only trains 2 different professions to doctorate level, apart from medicine. It was something like specialist biologists or something, and clinical psychologists are the only. We all know what's going on for the NHS right now. It's really tough. You need to show that you're committed to that NHS. You need to show that your experiences, even if they're not NHS, you can still show. I was born in the NHS. We all, lots of us were. So we need to show that we're committed, that we're going to stay around in the NHS for a long time. We're committed. They're spending a lot of money on us, so we need to show that we're committed. As well as commitment to the NHS, you need to demonstrate that you know what a clinical psychologist does. You know what you're letting yourself in for. Because training is one thing, but then being qualified is a whole different situation. And then managing that life is new. That's a different thing. But you need to show that you have something about you that shows that you can handle that. Why do you want to be a psychologist? Why? What is it? Why, if you're really interested in therapy, why not go and train as a therapist? Or if you are really interested in research, why not go and do a PhD or do research? Why do you want to be a clinical psychologist? Really, really important. And I've read a few applications this year, and a lot of the time it's about asking people to link back to the question. So for me this year, every paragraph ended with "that's why I'm a better candidate," some sort of sentiment like "that's why I'm a better candidate for clinical training." So it might be making me a suitable candidate, or making me a strong candidate, or something like that. It could be, whatever. But make sure that you're keeping that question in mind, so that it brings in some structure as well, and it makes it easier to read. As well, this is the biggest question. So you have 3,000 characters for this. Sounds like a lot. It's not. It's about like an A4 page, font size 11. It's not a lot to show everything about why you deserve a place. So don't make it a chunk of text though. Can you imagine reading an A4 page that's just a chunk of text, unreadable? Split it up with some, spaces. They don't count. You can press enter and break up the paragraphs. It makes it much easier to read into chunks because people are going to just scan it. That's all they're going to do, realistically, unless you have some people with a little bit more time. That's what they're going to do. So the second bit where you can kind of do a little bit of reflection, I suppose, this is a bit more informative, is the please give details of any publications or dissemination resulting from your work. So for my first few times applying, unfortunately I had a publication through undergraduate, fortunately, but I didn't put anything else in there about my dissemination. I didn't put anything else in there about anything that I'd done. And I've done loads of dissemination. I've done loads of presentations and stuff like that, but I've never put them in. So that's really important. Thanks. Yeah, no, linking back to the question is really important. But this bit has been addressed in a lot of places. So some people say that you just need to put like a Harvard referencing or APA style reference in there. I mean, I've interviewed twice last 2 years and I didn't put that. I put the reference and then I put like what I did to contribute to that. So I contributed as an interventionist and then explain what that was. And I contributed by drafting and contributing passages for peer review and stuff like that. So I think that's really important to elaborate a little bit on that experience. And this year, obviously, I've done a service audit, so I put that in there. I've done a piece of work about evidence-based practice and looking at the guidelines, so I put that in there. I've developed some training previously, so I put that in there. Lots of it can be in there. And I don't know if we're all that great at doing this as aspiring psychologists. I know I'm not. That's what my supervisor told me. Show off. You've got loads of skills. Show them off. Show off what you've done. Show off all the hard work that you've done. Make sure that it's in there as succinctly as you can. Really impress these people because they need to be impressed. They really do. So on these two questions, the other thing I will say, they will know in your experience section what jobs you've had. They will see that. That is available elsewhere on the form. Don't waste characters explaining your role. You can refer to your role. So I've referred to my assistant role I've referred to the supervision that I've had, what I've learned from that, how I've applied that learning, things like that. I've just got a question in. Did I have headings or titles for my personal statements? I only did for the publications and dissemination bit. I had publication as a heading and then the publication bit, and then I had promoting evidence-based practice as one, because that's a key competency and a key focus for psychologists, and then I had service development in there as well. Again, another key focus, another sort of competency that they're looking for. People do put headings in. I wouldn't advise against it. I think it's a good idea because it shows structure and it shows that you can be concise with different words. The way I structured mine, I just didn't think it would fit. I wrote it in quite a what's the right word? It was quite in a narrative way. So it was sort of going through my journey towards training. And I think the headings would have made that a little bit more stuck and sticky, if you like stagnated. So I didn't put them in there, but you absolutely can. People do advise it. So you can do. I hope that helps. So we'll go on to the next section, which is what would you hope to gain from clinical training? Now, don't be fooled. They are looking for answers here. That's what they want. So are there gaps in your knowledge or experience? I've never worked with kids, for example, so I could put in my form, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work clinically with children and adolescents, as an example. Why do you want to train in clinical psychology? Show all the different reasons. So for me, the reason that I'm not a therapist is because I want to do the research side of things as well. It's like the perfect job role for me. It's everything that I want in a job role. So that's why I've applied for it. So in mine, I put about some research that I was interested in doing, like my special areas of interest. I think, what else did I put in about learning therapy and contributing to the evidence base and things like that. This is kind of a section where you can tailor it to the university that you're applying to. With the application, you get to apply to 4. So that is not a lot of universities, but I would really recommend going through Clearinghouse. The BPS has already also got the alternative handbook, which is fantastic, which you can go through with a fine-tooth comb and look at the unis that you're looking at, that you're interested in. So this bit, so for example, I've applied to 4 unis where clinical health is a specialism in the 3rd year. My master's was in clinical and health, and it is something that I've enjoyed throughout my career is working in clinical and health, particularly body image and obesity and weight management and appearance and things like that. So I put that in there because I can tailor it to those unis. They know that I'm not only thinking about getting onto the doctorate, I'm thinking about year 3. And then when I say that I want to publish research, I'm not just thinking about on the doctorate, I'm thinking afterwards. I'm showing that I want to contribute to the evidence base, that, that it's going to benefit them. Universities want you to publish research. It looks good for them. So show them what, give them what they want. They want you to care about publishing research. So you can put that in there. And yeah, as I say, are there any specific things about the courses that you're applying to? So, for example, I know lots of them are very, very focused on neuro and things. Neuro's always scared me a bit because I can't remember all of the terms for the brain and everything. It scares me. But you can, if you are applying to that sort of thing, if that is your area of interest, then you can put that sort of stuff in there. So it could be, like I said, specialist placements. It could be the accreditation. So some unis are BA, BCP and AFT accredited. So it could be that. It could be the models that they run. I've applied to CBT and systemic. I mean, they're all CBT. But the secondary model I've applied for is systemic because that really interests me. Working with families really interests me. So really think about what it is you want to gain. I would sit down and write a list. I really would. Sit down and write a list about why you want to be a clinical psychologist, and then go through that list with a different lens, put a different hat on and think, can I do this in any other profession? If you can do that in any other profession, they are going to be like, well, why don't you go and train in that profession? They want people that know the nuances of a clinical psychologist job and want to do it as well. That's what they want. So be really mindful. It's not just about you, that section. They're testing what you know about clinical training. If you say, I want to go to the moon on clinical training, it's completely irrelevant, it's pointless, and it's unrealistic. So don't write that. But what I'm saying, the point I'm making is make it realistic, make it relevant. Now the next section is where you can have a little bit more fun and kind of show your personality a little bit more. Other information about yourself, for example, activities and interests apart from psychology. So this year there's been so many more videos and stuff, which I'll link on the Facebook group, helping you apply for the doctorate and think about different ways of doing the form and everything, which has just been so helpful. This section, you can show your personality. So for example, I don't know if my dad is still watching because it's been about 40 minutes now, but if he is, I put in there this year about how my dad and I love to watch the Formula One, and that I've spent a lot of Sundays at his house watching Formula One this year. And then I put in brackets when he's not snoozing or something like that, because he does love an afternoon nap. But it kind of just shows that I have a bit of personality and things like that. I also put in there that I have two house rabbits, and I love being a bunny parent, but I try to avoid posting too many photos to Instagram. That's that sort of thing. So it just shows your personality a little bit. They don't want robots that only care about psychology. So really think about who you are as a person. What's important to you? What is going to help you get through training? So I wrote about how my family and my friends and my fiance are really restorative. Spending time with them, it really soothes me and makes me feel better about things. So that's kind of demonstrating that I have resources around to manage that, you know. Yeah, no, I love this question. I found this question the easiest one to write. It really was. I suppose it's just because you're writing about you. But the other thing I was very mindful of is not wanting to make it sound too UCAS. And what I mean by that is I'm good at hockey and therefore I'm going to be a good psychologist. You know, it's not always about all the extracurricular activities that you do. So for one of the forms that I've reviewed, they wrote about how you know, some of their free time, they make sure they allocate some free time to just watching a film, you know, every week, or spending a couple of hours gaming every week, or, you know, whatever it is. But that shows that they have other things in their lives, basically. So that's really important. It demonstrates self-care, work-life balance. And as well, this section got my friends and family who don't, you know, aren't aware of the process, aren't aware of how people shortlist based on the forms. I got them to look at my form and I asked them about a couple of grammar things. But I asked them, do I come across in this form? If you were reading this, do you think that represents me? Do you think you know whose form this is? Is it accurate? That's another really good way of doing it. Your family and your friends don't need to know about the process. They just need to know about, is this your voice coming through in the form? Because that's the important thing. You know, anybody can write that they were an assistant psychologist and they've done a service audit and they disseminated the findings. Everybody's going to be using that language. What's special about you? What is important about you? Why do you need to have that place? The next bit is about space to discuss references. So it's something like if your work reference is not your current employer, please explain why. Fairly self-explanatory. You can't reflect here. You just have to write why your experience reference isn't that person. If you be careful about what you write, though. You know, don't write, I don't get on with my supervisor, therefore I've not asked them to do me a reference. Don't write that. You can frame it in a different way. You know, a lot of people say, I've recently started my position, my previous supervisor knows me better or knew me for longer, or, you know, something like that, and therefore we'll be able to provide a more accurate reference. You can put something like that. So the last question on the personal statements is, if there are any other factors relevant in assessing your application, please give brief details here. So this, I suppose it's not a massive controversy, but there is some conflicting advice, and I would say that it's really up to you. So if you have any lived experience and you feel happy for someone you don't know to read it, for a service user to read it, because a lot of these forms are shortlisted by service users, you know, experts by experience. So don't be using too much faffy language it's not needed. You don't need to use all that language to show that you understand it. Because a big part of being a psychologist is communicating psychological information to people that don't have your training, you know, and being able to get those ideas across using different language, using simpler language a lot of the time. You know, so basically just write it as if a service user is going to read it. If you feel happy with a service user or anybody reading about your mental health experience, then put it in. But the other thing to be mindful of is it adding to your application? You've got to be careful about the way you do it, I think. You know, if you write, I've got lived experience of mental health issues, therefore I understand mental health issues, therefore I'll make a good clinician. No, you need to elaborate a little bit more. So it could be you've been a carer before, therefore you understand a little bit about caring responsibilities. It could be that you're from a working class background, from an ethnic minority, underrepresented group background, and why that's important. Is it because you need more diverse voices in psychology? Yes, we do. So if you are from that community, then you can put it in there if it's relevant. But just be careful about what you put in there, I think, and how you do it. It's really up to you. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I think, is there anything else that you want to add that's not covered in any of the other sections is really what it means. But the application form is very comprehensive, so it should be fine. It should be. If there is anything else, then you can put it in there, basically. For example, lots of the courses ask you to have a driving license. I wouldn't necessarily put in there that you don't have one yet, but you could put in there that you are learning to drive, or you could put in something like that. That's just something else that could fit. So I'll just summarize a little bit while any questions come in. So if you've got any questions about anything I spoke about, anything that you want to know, then let me know. So keeping a reflective portfolio can help you organize and make sense of your reflections. Make your doctorate application personal with reflection. Those are the two big points from today. Those are the two big points. So if you take anything away, then try and take that. As I say, there are lots and lots of resources out there. So yeah. Anyone got any questions or anything that they want to know about any future webinars or any topics that they're really interested in? Anything at all, then pop it in the comments. Thanks for everyone that's engaged today. This has been really, really helpful. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Because sometimes it's very difficult because basically I'm sat in a room just with my laptop with no sort of feedback. I can't see anyone's faces. It's very weird. So I have, having that feedback is really, really helpful for me. So yeah, thanks guys. Well, thank you very much. That's really kind. So I'm going to move on to the upcoming webinars then, the ones that are happening in the next couple of months, while I wait for some questions. Actually, I've got another top tip. I would have, so write down why you want to be a psychologist. Then you have a separate list of competencies for a clinical psychologist. And then you have a trainee job description, which I'll make available on Facebook, but it's also on Clearinghouse's website as well. Then once you've got your application, go through and tick, just based on your application, just based on what is written, tick the bits that are done. So for example, if demonstration of reflective practice is in your form and you're happy that it's come through clearly in your form, tick it off. And then you'll have a list of things that aren't in your form. You can't put everything in, so don't panic. You can't put everything in. You literally can't. It's impossible. But prioritize. Think about what about you is important to show these people. So that's another really important bit. Another one little top tip. Sorry, I think I just went to sleep for a minute there. Another top tip is once you've got your application, I would put it on a Word document firstly, because it's much easier to edit and it helps you a little bit with grammar as well. So what I would do is highlight one paragraph, each paragraph, but you highlight the first paragraph, and then if you go to the review tab on Word, you can add a comment that will highlight the whole paragraph, and it will give you like a comment bubble to the side. In that bubble, write down every single competency or anything that comes through from that paragraph, and then again you'll have a list of everything that's in your application. So that's really, really helpful. I hope that helps. As I say, let me know on the Facebook group if you want someone to look through your form. There might be lots of us that are happy to. We've got 752 members on the group now. Can't believe it. So I'm sure out of those other 751 people, someone will look through your form if you want them to get a few pointers or anything. I really want to make this a bit more of a community. I want, yes, it's competitive, but we should be helping each other as well, because I think we all learn that way. So that's really helpful. So my next webinar's then Thursday the 26th of November at 7 o'clock again. We're going to look at 2 reflective models that you can use. That was the whole aim of these webinars, and we've got sidetracked by doctorate applications, but it's fine. So we're going to be back on track looking at the Gibbs 1988 reflective model. and the Brookfield 2005 reflective model. Have a little Google before if you'd like, but I will go through them all then. And the December one, my little Christmas gift to you all, is your choice of webinar. There's a poll on the Facebook group, and at the moment, live Q&A is winning, and that involves little preparation from me, so that's fine. That's not a problem. But voting closes on the 8th of November, Sunday the 8th of November. So get your votes in before then, and then we will be able to publicise it. Oh, thanks, guys. I won't read out your comments, even though they're very, very lovely. I won't read out your comments. Thank you so much, everyone. So if you want to get involved, there's a unit on Facebook, Reflective Portfolios and Doctorate Application. I'll make this recording available. I'll make all of the templates that I've mentioned available, and any links to any other webinars. There are so many brilliant resources out there. The BPS has done one about preparing to apply. Honestly, have a look around. If you just search on YouTube even or anything, then that will be then you'll find loads of stuff. As I've said, there's a poll on the Facebook group, and there'll be a little feedback survey. If anyone's got literally 2 minutes to just fill it in, let me know how they found this evening. It'd be really, really helpful. You can join us on our Facebook group, UK DCLIN Sci Applicants Reflective Space, and on our YouTube channel today, Clinical Psychology Community UK. And we've got a new Instagram page. It's at Clinical Psychology Community UK, where I'll be posting lots of different tips that you can even put in your reflective portfolio if you want to. You can copy them if you wanted to. So here's some references and helpful resources, guys. If you wanted them. But again, I'll make everything available on the Facebook group. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And good luck with everyone's applications. You're going to be great. You're going to be great. Believe in yourself. You've got this.